Hello everyone, this is Anthony from One Cut Studio. This series seeks to compare the rule set and changes between the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons and the newer 2024 edition. As a DM, my party and I have been using 5th edition for a long time, and we're trying to decide whether or not to make the jump to the 2024 rule set. If you, like me, want to know what changes have been made and if you should make the switch, then this series is for you. In this series, we're going to explore the main classes, subclasses, and core rules. I'll try to provide one-to-one comparisons whenever possible, but as a disclaimer, I will also share my own opinions as to the design and content. Today, we're going to look at the Barbarian class. So, for the Barbarian class, this is what we have. There's different wording. Class features from 5e are now called core traits. But essentially, for the Barbarian, the core features and traits has stayed the same. Hit die has stayed the same, saving throw proficiency stayed the same, skill proficiency, weapon proficiency, and armor proficiency has stayed the same. The only thing that has changed for the core traits are the starting equipment. So in 5e, you could choose from either a great axe and a martial weapon, or the B package, 2 hand axes and a simple weapon. For either A or B, you would get also the Explorer's Pack and 4 javelins. In the 2024 edition, you could choose either A or B. You're either going to get a great axe, 4 hand axes, the Explorer's Pack, and 15 gold, or you can say, don't give me any starting equipment, let me buy it myself, and they give you 75 gold for that. Which one's the better deal? That remains to be seen. So looking at the Barbarian features now, this is what makes a Barbarian a Barbarian. So there are some things that stayed the same. Your proficiency bonus stays the same between the two editions. When you go up in proficiency bonus, when that increases, that has stayed the same. The amount of rage damage you do and when those rage bonuses increases, that has also stayed the same between the two editions. But there are some new things added to the core features of the Barbarian in the 2024 edition, and there are several mechanics changes. So some of those features have remained at those levels, but the mechanics of those features have changed, and some of them are very important changes, very big differences as well. So at first level, there's a new feature called Weapon Mastery that we're going to talk more about that later. At third level, what was called Primal Path in 5th edition is now called, subclass. Basically, that's what it was. There is a new feature called Primal Knowledge that was added at 3rd level. At 7th level, there is a new feature called Instinctive Pounce. And one I think the biggest changes at 9th level, Brutal Critical in 5th edition is now called Brutal Strike. And the mechanics are very different. I think in some respects, game-breakingly so. But we'll talk more about that later. At 19th level, you don't get the ability score improvement that you did in 5th edition. Now you get the access to an epic boon. We'll talk more about that later on too. At 20th level, one of the other big changes is you no longer get unlimited rages. Your rage limit at 20th level is 6 per day. Now, there are some things you can do to get your rages back. That has changed. So, really, the limit's more like 12 per day. But no longer unlimited rages. And that brings us to the feature table. So, here we're comparing by level the 5e features. And then the 2024 features are right next to it. And then you'll see... just comparing rages. Rages really have stayed the same. Again, the only difference is at 20th level, instead of unlimited rages in 5th edition, in the 2024 edition, you get 6. So let's talk about some of the features. Now you'll see that I have some different colors highlighted under the 2024. Things that are yellow have had their mechanics changed. Things that are highlighted in green have been added. And things that are highlighted in red have been dropped completely. So let's look at level 1. We have Rage and Unarmored Defense in the 5th edition. In 2024, you still get your Rage, you still get Unarmored Defense. But here's the changes. Rage, the mechanics have changed, and weapon mastery is added. For second level, reckless attack and danger sense. Those two features carry over into 2024, but danger sense has been changed. We'll talk more about that later on. In Primal Path Level 3, that's your Barbarian subclass. We will talk about subclasses in another video. This one's just going to cover the core class features. But one of the things that in the 5th edition, there was just the 2 subclasses. In the 2024 edition, there are 4 Barbarian subclasses available to you. I think that also draws upon some of the additional content that came out in later books for 5e. Primal Knowledge is new. We'll talk about that. When you get to level 4, nothing changes. Level 5, nothing has changed. Those features, extra attack and fast movement, those mechanics have stayed the same. At level 6, you get your path feature, which is the same as the subclass feature. At level 7, Feral Instinct, you still get that. However, the mechanics for Feral Instinct have changed. You also have an additional ability called Instinctive Pounce, which has been added. Level 8, ability score improvement has stayed the same. Level 9, here we go. Brutal Critical has changed to Brutal Strike. Now, you still get these features at 9th, 13th, and 17th level. That hasn't changed when you get them, but the mechanics are vastly different, which we will talk about soon. At level 10, that has stayed the same. Path feature is a subclass feature. And at level 11, you still get Relentless Rage, but the mechanics for Relentless Rage have changed. Level 12, ability score improvement stays the same. Level 13, we talked about that. Level 14, that has stayed the same. You get a subclass feature. At level 15, Persistent Rage, you still get that. That stays the same. The mechanics have not changed. At level 16, ability score improvement has stayed the same. Level 17, again, we're going to talk about Brutal Critical soon and Improved Vertical Strike. At level 18, Indomitable Might, you still get that. However, the mechanics have changed. Level 19, and no ability score improvement from 5e. You get an Epic Boon instead. And at level 20, you still get Primal Champion, but Primal Champion mechanics have changed. So let's talk about some of these changes a little bit more in detail, moving on to level 1, which is Weapon Mastery. Now, this is training that you do with a weapon that you're proficient with. So you can think of proficiency and mastery as 2 different things. This is a whole new game design that they added to 2024 edition, but it does draw upon some of the things that you were able to do as optional maneuvers back in the 5th edition. So things like cleaving, tripping, things like that. What they're doing is they are putting specific weapon types or weapons to specific maneuvers, basically. So, for example, a great axe you can cleave with if you have mastery over that weapon. So you can have proficiency with a weapon, but in order to get the mastery to use those special techniques, you have to do some training. I think the designer did this to allow some more flexibility in combat. So more than just I hit with my sword or I hit with my axe. It's like, all right, I have mastery over with this weapon. When I hit with it, I can cleave and I can attack through to another character or another enemy. What I don't like about the design is that you can change your mastery after a long rest. To me, you either mastered it or you didn't master it. There is no changing mastery. That kind of irritates me. But I can understand why the designers chose to do this as a way to add some more options in combat versus just striking. All right, so let's talk about some important things. Let's talk about rage. So rage mechanics have changed, and some of these are the changes. In 5e, when you expend a rage, it was gone. It was gone until you completed a long rest. Until you completed your long rest, you would not get your rages back. In 2024, you can get at least one expended rage back after a short rest. And you get them all back after a long rest. But the biggest change comes to the duration mechanic. So if you look at the duration for 5e, which is on this side, the duration lasts for a minute. When you go into a rage, which is a bonus action, it lasts for a minute, and it ends if you're knocked unconscious, you haven't attacked somebody, or taken damage, and you can also end it as a bonus action. So basically, they're giving you a rage that lasts, but you still have to do something to keep up that rage. In 2024, your duration of your rage only lasts until the end of your next turn, but it can go up to 10 minutes. Again, you have to be more active in keeping your rage going versus the 5th edition. You still have some of the same things that you have to do, like you have to make an attack roll. I guess taking damage doesn't count anymore. So you have to attack. You have to force. They added, forcing an enemy to make a saving throw, or using a bonus action to keep your rage going. So even if you didn't attack that turn, let's say you're chasing down an enemy, you won't lose your rage if you can use a bonus action to keep that rage going. So I do like that addition to 2024. It kind of does put a little bit more onus on you for keeping your rage going, but doesn't penalize you for not being able to get to an enemy. And also allowing you to extend your rage up to 10 minutes, that, makes you a lot more viable as, a damage dealer. It makes you more consistent. Again, if you don't have your armor or are incapacitated, your rage ends. I also do like that condition. So there's some pluses and minuses to the rage mechanic changing, but I think overall it's a pretty good change. So that brings us to level 2, Danger Sense. How has Danger Sense changed? With 5e, you had disadvantage on... You have advantage on dex saves against effects that you could see. So if you could see someone casting a spell at you that required a dex save, you'd have advantage on that dex save. This also worked against traps, but the stipulation was you couldn't be blinded, deafened, or incapacitated. Now, the 2024 edition says, you know what? You have advantage on dex saves unless you are incapacitated. This is much more powerful, and I'm wary against giving blanket advantage on any type of ability save. So that's a real boon to the Barbarians. Barbarians, as long as you're not incapacitated in the 2024 rule set, you have advantage on dex saves. That's powerful. When we look at the subclasses at level 3 for 5e, the options were Berserker and Totem Warrior. This is not including all the additional content from like Xanathar's and Tasha's, but just the main core rulebook, Berserker and Totem Warrior. For the 2024 subclasses, you get Berserker, you get Wildheart, which is a retooling of Totem Warrior, World Tree, and Zealot, which Zealot, I believe, came from a 5th edition additional rule set. So, we'll go into that in another video. So now we're on to level 3 abilities. Level 3 Primal Knowledge has been added. So you get your subclasses at level 3 as normal, but now they added something else. So what level 3 Primal Knowledge does is it adds another skill proficiency from your Barbarian skill list. So when you made your character, you were able to choose only 2 skills that you're proficient in. At level 3, you get another one, which is great. I like that for our Barbarians. What I don't necessarily agree with is the next part, is whenever you are raging, the following skills basically can be treated like a strength check for you instead of their normal ability modifier. So, while you're raging, you can roll acrobatics, intimidation, perception, stealth, or survival using your strength modifier. So, to me, that's a little silly. They say, in the design, it's because you're using your primal knowledge to do this thing. I look at it more of an adrenaline rush. And, you're raging. You probably wouldn't be that great at stealth or perception. You could make an argument for perception if you're honed in. But I almost view it as an adrenaline rush. I'm okay with using your strength check on an intimidation. But then again, these are all skills that have their own abilities for a reason. And you're letting them use strength instead. I think it could use a little bit of a rework. I do agree with giving the Barbarian an extra skill. I think it makes them a little bit more useful outside of combat. I think the Barbarian really is a combat class, and giving them an opportunity to express more skills, use a little bit more of their skill set, makes them a little bit more useful outside of combat. Otherwise, the Barbarian is only useful in combat. So now that brings us to the level 7 change, Feral Instinct. So at level 7, you still get Feral Instinct. You still have advantage on initiative rolls. That has stayed the same. But 2024 makes a change where they remove the feature that you can act normally if you're surprised at the beginning of the combat, as long as you aren't incapacitated and you go into a rage first on your turn. I think it streamlines Feral Instinct in a good way. Basically, if you're surprised, you're surprised. Sorry, going into rage is not going to solve that problem for you. I totally agree with the rework on Feral Instinct. Have advantage on initiative rolls? Fine. I don't have an issue with that. Level 7, they added a new ability called Instinctive Pounce. When you enter your rage as a bonus action, so as you enter rage, you can also move up to half your speed. So I see a Barbarian going into a rage and chasing down an enemy. Cool, I'm okay with that. That's a pretty good addition if you ask me. Now, where I have a problem is Brutal Strike. All right? So in 5e, Brutal Critical was very simple. You can roll an additional weapon damage die when you scored a critical hit. And this scaled. And you knew the scaling. It went up. It started at 1 additional weapon die, then 2 additional, then 3 additional. It's not so simple in the 2024 edition. It's a little bit more complicated. And it makes the Barbarian a little bit more complicated to play. So if you're looking for a class to give somebody that hasn't played before and wants an easier class, or they can't handle playing a more complicated class, the Barbarian just got a little bit more complicated. What I think they did this for was to allow the Barbarian a little bit more flexibility in combat, to give them more options, more than just, being a damage monkey and just, hitting damage and doing lots. But we'll talk a little bit more of that in a second. So in the 2024 edition, here's one of the biggest changes. Brutal Strike does not apply to criticals. So it only applies to when your Barbarian is using their attacking recklessly, which again only applies to your first attack on your turn. So what does that mean? That means you're no longer relying on doing extra damage on a 5% chance. So a crit is a 5% chance on the d20, right? It does give your Barbarian, if they choose to attack recklessly, it gives them an opportunity of doing this once per round, basically. So it gives them something more consistent, more consistent way to do extra damage. Now, you are doing extra damage, but it's only an additional D10. There are some other requirements that you have to do as well. So you have to attack, like I said, you have to attack recklessly, and you have to forego the advantage, which I do think is good because I know some of the other features of this are devastating, and advantage gives you a better chance to hit. And as someone running monsters, I don't want this to hit that often, to be honest with you, even though I know it will, because barbarians are great at attacking. So that's why I think that this level, this feature is a little broken. And I'll say why in a minute too. So you have to forego your advantage while attacking recklessly. If you choose to do that, you also can't have disadvantage on the strike. But if you do, and you hit, you get to do an extra D10 damage. And in addition, you apply basically a special technique or an effect, which are really powerful debuffs. So at 9th level, you get a choice of 2. Forceful Blow, which you knock the enemy back 15 feet, and then move up to half your speed to them without provoking attacks of opportunity. So knock an enemy back, maybe get them out of combat, engaging with one of your other, teammates, and then run up to them and then continue your attack. I can see that working. What I don't like about Forceful Blow is it doesn't take into account the size of the enemy. So theoretically, you could have a small gnome barbarian using this against a gargantuan creature, and as long as they hit, they can knock them 15 feet back. So to me, that seems a little bit broken because there's no size limits imposed on Forceful Blow. Hamstring Blow, you reduce the target's speed by 15 feet until the start of your next turn. All right, I can see that. That's pretty cool. Again, there's no saving throws on these. If you hit, these happen. So that's why I think that this is incredibly broken / devastating. The most broken one to me is Staggering Blow. You hit, the target makes its next saving throw at disadvantage and can't make opportunity attacks until the start of your next turn. So 2 bad things happen. There's no saving throw against it. All you have to do is hit. And, you could potentially set this up for some nasty combo attacks with a sorcerer or a wizard. Boom. Next saving throw, it doesn't even have to be a strength save or a dex save. Any type of saving throw, their next one is at disadvantage. That's really powerful. And then Sundering Blow. The next attack roll made by another creature against the target gets a +5. So that's like you're breaking through their armor and you leave a little bit of opening. This would pair well if you had a Barbarian and Rogue combo. So, it just makes it that much easier for them to get their sneak attack in. Now, where it gets really, really broken is at 17th level. The damage increases only at this level, so it was at 9th level, not at 13th. You just got an extra choice. And then at 17th level, then it goes up. So it's not very intuitive as far as damage scaling. At 17th level, it's an extra 2d10 damage. And you can apply, here's the devastating part, 2 effects instead of 1. So knock them back and make them staggered. Hamstring them and, sunder them. Any combination of those it's devastating. So essentially, you're less reliant on a 5% chance to score a critical hit, but you still can do consistent amounts of big damage per round. Basically, it increases your overall DPR, and it makes them, gives them a lot more debuffing. That makes a Barbarian a very deadly, combatant. Give these debuffing effects. So I think this is one to watch for sure as far as play goes. And as a DM, if I notice the game balance is thrown off with this, I might even home rule some changes to that. So let's talk about level 11, Relentless Rage. So this changed. So in 5e, if you drop to 0 hit points while raging, you can make a DC 10 con save or drop to 1 hit point instead. Again, the DC increases by 5 each time and resets after a short or long rest. In the 2024 edition, if you drop to 0 hit points while raging, you can make a DC 10 con save or drop to hit points equal to half your Barbarian level. That's the change. The DC increase stays the same, and the short or long rest component stays the same. So the only change was, instead of dropping to 1 hit point, you drop to half your Barbarian level. That's not so bad, because at level 20, it's 10. And so, you're still fighting on the verge of death, and I think that's okay. I think that's a good change. Relentless Rage is fine. In level 15, Persistent Rage, you get that. In 5e, it was very simple. Your rage ends only if you fall unconscious or you choose to end it. Now in 2024, they've added the feature that you regain all your expended rages when you roll initiative. And you can't use this feature again until a long rest has been completed. So instead of unlimited rages, all right, you get 6. But after a short rest, you can get all those 6 back. Or actually, not after short rest. After short rest, you can get 1 back. But when you roll initiative and you don't have any, you can get 6 back. So essentially, at level 20, you get 12 rages per day. And again, your rage lasts for 10 minutes without you needing to do anything. So that's the other change too. In 5e, you didn't need to hit. Your rage lasted. In 2024, this negates all that stuff from the earlier rage rules about you having to force a saving throw, about you having to hit somebody, about you having to use a bonus action to keep it going. Your rage will last 10 minutes without you needing to do anything to keep it going, but it still ends if you are unconscious or you don heavy armor. But it curiously says, even basically when you're incapacitated, you can still maintain your rage. So really, unconsciousness ends your rage, but incapacitated, let's say like you're being charmed or held in thrall, your rage will still continue to go on. Level 18, Indomitable Might, that mechanic has changed. In 5e, you can use your strength score as your total for a strength check if your rolled check is below your strength score. So let's say you are rolling a strength check to pick something up. It's heavy, and you, all in all, with all your bonuses, you roll a 12. Well, let's say your strength score is more than 12. You can, let's say your strength score is an 18. You can use your strength score as the result instead. How it changes in 2025 is that they added, you can use this to supplement as a substitute for your strength saving throw. So you get the strength check, and now additionally you get a strength saving throw. So let's say you didn't make a strength saving throw and you get a total of a 6, okay, and your score is an 18, well, you can use your 18. At level 19, you get 1 less ability score improvement. That's what you had at 5e at this level. In 2024, they got rid of it and swapped it out for an epic boon. So these were things that were in the previous edition in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and you got after level 20. If you wanted to keep going on through a epic level campaign beyond 20, every so-and-so amount of XP beyond level 20, you could get an epic boon. Now, why did they add it to the before 20 levels in this new edition? I don't know. My guess is probably like, hey, not many people got past 20. They stopped playing past 20. We will have these cool epic boons. We want to reward these characters earlier on and make them more of an epic character before they reach 20. That's my guess. Am I okay with it? I don't know. It remains to be seen. Some of those epic boons are pretty strong, but then again, at level 19, your character should be pretty strong. So the jury is out on that for now. Level 20, you still get Primal Champion. In 5e, your strength and con increase by 4 to a maximum of 24. The only difference in 2024 edition, you still get that strength and con increase by 4, but the maximum has changed to 25. So all in all, the changes to Barbarian seem to allow the class for more flexibility and options in combat over just being a regular damage dealer. It allows them to be more consistent in dealing damage over time versus sporadic moments of lots of damage, as in the Brutal Critical. The biggest change that I'm wary of is that Brutal Strike, which complicates the Barbarian and seems a little broken, especially that Staggering Strike and then stacking on these debuffs. It does offer the opportunity for more team-coordinated attacks. Danger Sense also is the powerful boost, giving that blanket, hey, have advantage on all deck saves as long as you're not incapacitated. So I'm wary of that. And then I also disagree with the strength substitution for certain skills while raging under the Primal Knowledge feature. I do agree with that, giving the Barbarian a little bit more access to skills. So overall, there's some good things, there's some bad things. I'm sure as we go along and continue with this series, I'll find some more changes to these classes that I like and I don't like. And hopefully you can use this information to make up your mind whether you should switch between 5e in 2024 or, heck, I even have a campaign where you're running both rule sets. Supposedly they're backwards compatible, but they said the 2024 edition rules trump the 5e. Playing with both sets of rules will pose a challenge, so I think one of the best bets is to choose. And I hope you enjoyed this video and look forward to the rest. All right, we'll see you next time.